Sometimes, life hides miracles in the most unexpected corners, in the cracks of broken streets, in the voices of those who have nothing but dreams. Cebu's crowded markets had heard thousands of cries, laughs, and songs, but none like the soft, trembling notes that came from a barefoot girl named Mira. She was just another face in a sea of survival, selling handmade bracelets with her mother, humming tunes to pass time. Yet, inside her, a storm of melodies waited to escape. Every night, under a leaking tin roof, she sang to the stars, not for fame, but to forget hunger. How could a voice born in pain touch the heart of a man who had seen the world's greatest talents? How could a girl with no stage, no microphone, no spotlight, make the entire world stop and listen? That was the question destiny would soon answer, on a stage thousands of miles away, where Mira would stand trembling before the bright lights of America's Got Talent. The same girl who once sang to stray dogs and street vendors, would soon sing before millions. But the road to that moment was not easy. It began in the narrow streets of Cebu, where every dream came at a cost. Her mother, Luz, worked from dawn to dusk, selling fruit by the roadside. Sometimes there was food, sometimes there wasn't, but there was always hope. Hope, that one day, Myra's voice would be heard. And on that one golden day, when Myra's trembling voice echoed through the grand stage, Simon Cowell's sharp gaze softened. He didn't see a contestant. He saw a story, a soul who had carried music through hunger, rain, and pain. Before the world knew her name, Mira had already won something far greater, belief. Mira Santos was only 15, but life had aged her heart far beyond her years. She lived with her mother, Luz, in a small wooden hut at the edge of Cebu's crowded lanes, a home that shook whenever the wind grew wild, yet held the warmth of love stronger than any storm. Each morning, Mira would wake before the sun, sweeping the dusty floor and helping her mother arrange baskets of mangoes and bananas to sell at the market. Her hands were always busy, her mind always dreaming. She sang softly while working, simple songs, the kind she learned from listening to radios outside closed shop windows. Her voice was not loud, but it carried emotion so raw that even neighbors paused when they heard her sing through the thin walls. For Mira, music wasn't a dream of fame, it was survival. It was the only way she knew to turn pain into something beautiful. She rarely spoke much. Shyness wrapped around her like a blanket. But when she sang, that quiet girl disappeared. In those moments, it was as if the world itself listened, the rustling leaves, the passing tricycles, the whispers of her mother's prayers. Her daily routine was simple: wake, help her mother, sing, and dream. Some days, she would sit by the sea, letting the wind carry her voice over the waves. It was her escape, her secret stage. Mira had small habits that revealed her gentle soul. She often saved leftover bread for the stray dogs near the pier. She kept an old notebook filled with song lyrics she couldn't fully read, but she knew how they felt. Yet behind that quiet smile, there was a deep loneliness, the kind that comes from knowing you're meant for something more, but not knowing how to reach it. Still, she never complained. She believed, somehow, that the world would one day hear her song. And though she didn't know it, for all her hope and quiet strength, Myra's life carried a shadow that never left her side: poverty. It was the kind of poverty that didn't just take away food or comfort, but slowly stole a person's belief in themselves. Her mother, Luz, often hid her tears behind a smile. When the fruit baskets didn't sell, she would tell Mira they'd eat later, pretending she wasn't hungry. Mira saw through it. She saw the cracks in her mother's hands, the exhaustion in her eyes. Each night, as the rain tapped against their tin roof, she sang softly to cover the sound of her mother's quiet sobs. But the hardest part wasn't hunger. It was dreaming. Dreaming in a world that constantly reminded her of what she couldn't have. Every time she saw singers on TV, glowing in bright lights, a sharp ache filled her chest. She wanted to be like them, not for fame, but to make her mother proud. Yet that dream felt impossibly far, like a star she could never reach. One day, her old radio broke, the only thing that kept her connected to music. She held it in her hands, eyes stinging. It was a small thing, but it felt like losing her only friend. That night, she couldn't sing. For the first time, silence filled the room. In that silence, doubt began to grow. Maybe her voice didn't matter. Maybe it was foolish to dream when reality was so harsh. Mira began singing less, her melodies fading like the dim light of their single bulb. Even the sea, once her comfort, began to feel cold and distant. She watched others laugh, live, and move on, while she remained trapped between survival and hope. The real conflict wasn't outside, it was within her. The war between her heart that still whispered, "Try again," and her mind that said, "It's useless." But sometimes, life waits for a person to almost give up, before sending a sign that everything is about to change. Mira didn't know it yet, but her voice, the one she was slowly burying, was about to lead her somewhere she never dared to imagine. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day when nothing special was meant to happen. The market was busy, the sun merciless, and Mira stood beside her mother's fruit stall, quietly singing under her breath as she arranged mangoes. Unbeknownst to her, a tourist couple passing by stopped. They weren't sure at first where the sound came from, it was soft, almost like the wind. But then they saw her, a barefoot girl, eyes closed, singing a song that didn't need an audience. There was something pure in her voice, something untrained yet powerful. The woman took out her phone and recorded a short clip. "This girl's voice could touch the world," she whispered. They smiled at Mira, left a few pesos for fruit, and disappeared into the crowd. Mira didn't think much of it. To her, it was just another day, another small moment lost in the noise of life. But fate was quietly at work. A week later, that short video appeared online. It spread like wildfire across social media, shared, reposted, and viewed by millions. The Angel of Cebu, people called her. Strangers wrote messages saying her voice brought them to tears. When Mira saw the video, she couldn't believe it was her. Her heart raced, torn between fear and wonder. Luz wept silently, clutching her daughter's hands, whispering prayers of gratitude. For the first time, it felt like the world had finally heard them. Then came an email, one that neither could have imagined. America's Got Talent had seen the video. They wanted Mira to audition. For hours, she just stared at the screen, trembling. Excitement and fear tangled within her. She had never even left Cebu, let alone flown across oceans. The idea of standing before cameras, lights, and judges like Simon Cowell felt unreal, impossible. But deep inside, something awakened, a small spark of courage that had been asleep for years. That night, as she stood by the sea, the same place where she had once sung to forget her pain, she whispered into the waves, "Maybe this is my time." And somewhere far beyond those waters, destiny whispered back, "Yes, it is." The journey to America was more than just a trip, it was a test of Myra's heart. She had never been on an airplane before. As she watched the clouds drift beneath her, fear and wonder fought inside her chest. She kept thinking of her mother, still in Cebu, waving goodbye with tears shining in her eyes. Luz had sold nearly everything she owned to buy Myra's passport and travel essentials. It wasn't just money she had given up, it was her security, her comfort, her everything. In the bright city lights of Los Angeles, Mira felt smaller than ever. The world moved too fast, everyone seemed confident and sure. She was just a poor girl from Cebu with a trembling heart and a borrowed dress. The night before her audition, she couldn't sleep. Her mind filled with doubts, what if they laugh? What if I fail? But in that fear, she remembered her mother's words, the ones whispered on sleepless nights, "Mira, when you sing, let your heart speak, not your fear." At dawn, she stood by her hotel window, humming softly to herself. It wasn't a song of confidence, but of prayer. With every note, she began to understand something, that her voice didn't need perfection, it only needed honesty. When she finally walked backstage at America's Got Talent, her knees shook. The stage looked enormous, the lights blinding. Around her were contestants with expensive outfits and vocal coaches. She had none of that. But she carried something they didn't, years of pain turned into music. As the stage manager called her name, Mira took a deep breath. The world had always told her she was small, invisible, ordinary. But at that moment, she realized something powerful: her voice was her story, and stories like hers could move mountains. The fear didn't disappear, but she carried it with grace. She had faced hunger, loneliness, and hopeless nights. This stage was just another storm to walk through. And as she stepped into the spotlight, she wasn't just singing for herself anymore, she was singing for every child who had ever been told they weren't enough. The stage lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. Mira stood alone in the center, a small figure against a world of brilliance. The judges' eyes were fixed on her, cameras rolling, millions waiting. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it echoing in her chest. Then, the music began. It was soft at first, just a simple melody. Mira closed her eyes and let the sound carry her back, to the narrow streets of Cebu, to the scent of mangoes, to her mother's tired smile. She began to sing. Her voice trembled for a second, then rose, pure and haunting. It was the kind of voice that silenced even the restless crowd, fragile yet filled with power born from pain. Each note carried a memory, nights of hunger, days of longing, moments of silent prayer. The audience leaned in. Simon Cowell's usual sharp expression softened, his eyes glistening. He wasn't listening to a contestant anymore, he was witnessing a miracle. When Mira reached the final verse, her voice broke, not from weakness, but from emotion. It was as if her soul itself was speaking. And when the last note faded, there was a moment of complete silence, the kind that only happens when hearts are too full to speak. Then the audience erupted. People stood, clapping, crying, cheering her name. Simon Cowell rose slowly, wiping a tear he didn't try to hide. And then, with a small smile, he pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained from the ceiling, glimmering like pieces of heaven. Mira froze, hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The moment she had once only dared to dream about was now real, glowing, shining, surrounding her. Back home in Cebu, Luz watched the live broadcast on a neighbor's old TV. As the confetti fell around her daughter, she broke down in tears, whispering a prayer of gratitude to the skies. Mira had not just sung a song, she had sung her life. And in doing so, she had turned every struggle, every tear, into a symphony of triumph. That day, the world didn't just discover a voice. It discovered a story that would never be forgotten.